The alien core to the Jylor Empire was a masterpiece of terror and opulence, designed to overwhelm anyone who dared step inside. Crystal columns twisted toward impossibly high ceilings, shimmering with colors that shifted depending on the angle of one's gaze. The air hummed with latent energy, a constant reminder that the Empire's power was not just political. It was physical, tangible, lethal. And at the center of it all, seated on a throne of black diamond and platinum, was Princess Virella. The child was not what the Empire had intended. She was quiet, almost unnervingly so, a creature of patience and observation. Generals leaned forward. Diplomats practiced their most elaborate greetings, and emissaries from far-flung systems unfolded displays of exotic technology meant to awe and intimidate. Every one of them failed spectacularly. Virella ignored them all. She didn't merely disinterest herself. She actively avoided acknowledgement, as if their existence were a minor inconvenience, an irritation too small to merit attention. Then he arrived. He was a human soldier, one of countless representatives the galaxy had dismissed for centuries as fragile, short-lived, laughably primitive. Yet there he stood, in scuffed armor that had seen multiple worlds burn, dirt crusted on the edges of his boots, rifle slung over one shoulder, scars etched across his hands and face like a map of survival. And the little princess's violet eyes, bright, impossible, found him immediately. The queen's laughter cut through the hole like a serrated knife. "This is absurd," she hissed at her advisers, her multiple eyes narrowing. "No creature in my court has ever shown such focus. It cannot be. Explain this. Explain to me why she watches him as if he were the sun itself." The chief adviser, a sinewy creature with 6 coiling arms and eyes that independently darted around the room, shuffled nervously. "Your Majesty," the child, she senses strength. She sees something different in him. Something real. Something human. The queen's taloned fingers drummed against the throne. "Strength?" she spat. "He is human. That species. Fragile, short-lived, expendable. What strength could they possibly have that would surpass the wisdom of our generals, the majesty of our envoys, the power of the Empire itself?" The soldier, oblivious to the political storm swirling around him, simply smiled. Not arrogantly, not condescendingly, just a calm, steady smile that suggested a quiet understanding the Jylor could never fathom. He did not bow. He did not pander. He did not attempt to impress. He merely existed, and somehow that was enough. Virella's small hand twitched, the movement so slight that no one but the human noticed. "What is your name?" she asked softly. Marcus Hale, though she did not know that yet, paused. "Hale," he said simply. "Marcus Hale." Her lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. It was a dangerous thing in the eyes of the court. A child smiling at a human soldier was almost treasonous, an act that undermined centuries of social hierarchy. The queen's jaw tightened. She had trained her daughter to respect order, protocol, power. And now, in one glance, her daughter ignored all of it. "You see," the advisor whispered, "she doesn't just acknowledge him, she trusts him. That is unprecedented." The queen's eyes narrowed, the faint green iridescence in them swirling with a mixture of disbelief and fury. "Trust?" she repeated, voice rising like a whip crack. "She cannot possibly trust a human. We've studied their species for centuries. They are unpredictable, emotional, violent, weak. They cannot survive without their machines. They cannot govern without chaos. And yet she watches him, as though all else is insignificant. How is this possible?" The human soldier remained perfectly still, yet his calm exuded a strange magnetism, a quiet assurance that seemed almost tangible. The Jylor guards, the diplomats, even the high-ranking generals shifted uneasily, sensing the weight of it without understanding why. Humans, they thought, were frail. They were inconsequential. Yet here, in the heart of the Empire, one human radiated something far greater than all the combined might of Jylor authority. Virella, seated atop a throne of her own, though one far humbler than the ceremonial throne, leaned forward slightly. "Why does everyone talk so much?" she asked, voice as light as falling crystal. "If you want someone to listen, maybe you shouldn't yell." A ripple of shock ran through the assembly. No child had ever spoken this way. Certainly not a princess, certainly not one expected to be a puppet of politics and ritual. The queen's claws flexed on the armrest. She cannot, she must not. Marcus Hale tilted his head slightly, considering her words. Some people just don't get it, he said quietly. Talking doesn't make them right. That simple statement carried a weight no Jalor courtier could match. A single sentence, stripped of ceremony or flattery, cut through centuries of entitlement, and the child, Virella, laughed. It was soft, almost melodic, yet full of fire, a sound that seemed to unbalance the carefully structured court. The queen's chest tightened. She listens to him. She laughs at him. Yes, the advisor whispered, and it frightens me. Frightens you? The queen's tone was disbelief incarnate. It terrifies me. She is my daughter, the heir to this empire, and she watches a human like he is a god. Marcus Hale did not respond. He didn't need to. His mere presence had already rewritten the rules of engagement in that room. No weapons were drawn. No threats needed issuing. The human survival instinct, their calm audacity, their refusal to be intimidated, was already reshaping the balance of power. Virella's gaze never wavered. She leaned closer to him, violet eyes alight with curiosity and fascination. "Do you fight?" she asked. "I have," he said, "and I survive. That's the important part." She nodded solemnly. "I like survivors." That one sentence, casual and innocent, struck terror deeper than any fleet or army could. The queen's advisors exchanged glances, their many eyes blinking in unison. She admires him," one of them whispered. "Yes," the chief advisor admitted, "more than anyone else in the empire. Perhaps more than anyone in history." The queen's hand tightened into fists, her nails digging into the polished armrest. Impossible. Unacceptable. He is human. She is Jalor. We cannot. The human soldier's calm smile interrupted her fury. "You worry too much," he said. "Some things just take time to make sense. Some things just need to be seen." And Virella, quiet, small, and impossibly powerful in her own way, simply watched him. The room held its breath, every diplomat, every general, every emissary waiting for the inevitable collapse, the expected punishment. But nothing came. The human soldier did not flinch, did not yield, did not panic. And for the first time in the history of the Jalor Empire, a child decided whom she would trust, and that choice did not bend to centuries of protocol or power. It was the beginning of something none of them could yet understand. And the queen, for the first time in her life, felt fear. The war had begun 6 cycles ago. Humanity had arrived on the edges of the Jalor Empire not with grand fleets or diplomatic fanfare, but with precision, audacity, and a terrifying willingness to survive. They were small in number, their ships modest compared to the Empire's colossal war cruisers, their soldiers lightly armored compared to the alien juggernauts. Yet every human strike was a lesson in unpredictability, a single calculated move that left whole battle groups paralyzed, systems falling before the Jalor could comprehend the pattern. Corporal Marcus Hale had been sent to observe Princess Virella's world, a planet both exquisite and fortified, where spires of luminous crystal clawed the skies and the air hummed with alien energy. His mission, as the humans saw it, was to gather intelligence, report on the political climate, and, if necessary, protect the princess from those who underestimated her. But humans were never content with observation alone. Humans improvised. Humans survived. And in a galaxy full of certainty that was terrifying, Virella had been watching Marcus from the first moment he set foot on her planet. Unlike the Jalor guards, who strutted and postured, or the diplomats, who bowed in ritualized perfection, Marcus moved with purpose. Every step was deliberate, every gesture economical. He didn't attempt to impress her with flashy displays of alien etiquette or promises of interstellar wealth. He merely existed, steady, resilient, and unyielding. She had seen him on the transport, boots scuffed from 100 worlds, rifle slung lazily over one shoulder, scars etched into his skin like the lines of an ancient map. She had seen him eat quietly in the mess hall while generals and diplomats bickered over protocol and policy, their voices rising into shrill echoes. And she had seen him laugh once, briefly, when a Jalor envoy tried to intimidate him with a ceremonial blade that could slice a starship in half. The envoy had turned crimson, the blade trembling in his hand, and Marcus had laughed as if the weapon were nothing more than a stick. Virella's small lips had curved. "He is not afraid," she whispered to herself. "Fear is a tool," Marcus said, reading her expression without looking. "But only if you understand it. Most people, they don't." From that moment, something subtle yet powerful had changed in the young princess. She no longer merely watched. She studied. She learned. She measured. The humans' approach to conflict, their resilience, their refusal to bow or tremble, fascinated her. One evening, she followed him to the observation deck, hidden beneath curtains of luminescent crystal. She saw him staring at the stars, tracing lines with his finger as if calculating trajectories, imagining outcomes. "Do you see them?" she asked, stepping closer. "I see the possibilities," Marcus said, "and the mistakes. People focus on what is obvious, what is immediate. They rarely see what's coming next. Most of the galaxy never prepares for humans, and that's why we survive." Virella tilted her head, curiosity shining in her violet eyes. "Why humans? Why survive when the odds are always against you?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. He let the question linger, a weight in the air. "Because we have to. Because no one else will. Because sometimes it's the only way to teach the universe a lesson it needs to learn." She laughed softly, a sound like wind chimes over steel. "I like that," she said. "I like that very much." And that small, innocent approval will become the spark that ignited a chain of events no one, neither Jalor nor human, could have predicted. The humans' first strike came without warning. Entire patrol fleets vanished in the blink of an eye, casualties so precise it was as if the enemy had been erased, not destroyed. Jalor's sensors failed to detect the vectors. Their communication relays were crippled. And at the heart of it all was Marcus, guiding small squads of humans like pieces on a galactic chessboard. Each move calculated, each engagement a lesson in ingenuity. It was not brute force that made humans dangerous. It was their unpredictability. They used the enemy's arrogance against them, turned protocols into traps, and never followed patterns the Jalor expected. When the Empire sent an elite battle group to secure Princess Virella's planet, Marcus had anticipated it. They hadn't counted on the humans' ability to blend guerrilla tactics with strategic brilliance, striking in one sector and vanishing before reinforcement could arrive. Virella, ever curious, observed every maneuver. From the palace's high towers, she saw humans leap from drop ships onto alien war machines, dismantling them piece by piece with a mixture of ingenuity and sheer audacity. She saw humans survive in environments that would have shredded Jalor physiology, turning hazard into weapon, weakness into strength. "You are insane," she whispered one night as Marcus returned to the observatory. Sweat and grime streaked across his face. "I'm human," he said simply. "We allowed a little insanity. It helps us survive." She smiled, violet eyes glinting. "I've never seen anyone fight like that. Not even your superiors." "That's because they fight to win," he said, lighting a small lamp that cast flickering shadows across the crystal walls. "We fight to live, and when you fight to live, you're unpredictable, you're dangerous, and sometimes you're unstoppable." The Queen, monitoring the human soldier through surveillance, was growing desperate. "Impossible," she murmured. "How does he survive? How does he remain untouchable? And why does my daughter, my precious, delicate child, follow him like a shadow?" The chief advisor, eyes wide, hissed softly, "Your Majesty, humans are not like us. They are a threat in ways we cannot measure. They think differently. They fight differently. And the child, she senses it. She knows what we cannot see. She trusts him." The Queen's claws scraped the armrest of her throne. "Trust him? This cannot continue. If she aligns with a human, if she mirrors their instincts, our empire is in jeopardy." Meanwhile, Marcus taught Virella to see beyond the glittering facade of power, to see weakness where the Empire saw strength, to recognize strategy in chaos and advantage in unpredictability. Under his quiet guidance, the princess learned to plan, to anticipate, and, above all, to question. The Jalor had raised her to obey, to conform, to be the perfect heir, but Marcus showed her that true power lay in defiance, in subtlety, in bending the rules the Empire lived by. Weeks passed. Skirmishes erupted across the planet. Humans, outnumbered and underestimated, struck with surgical precision. Entire battalions fell to traps Marcus designed overnight, using nothing more than the environment, patience, and human ingenuity. The Jylor had weapons, numbers, and centuries of experience. But humans had audacity, resilience, and chaos. Virella watched from the shadows as the soldiers moved, her fascination deepening into respect, then into awe. The humans did not fight for glory. They did not fight for conquest. They fought to endure, to protect, to survive. And in their survival, they reshaped the battlefield entirely. One night, as Marcus cleaned his rifle in the observatory, Virella approached, silent. "I've seen how you fight," she said. "I've seen how you survive, and I want to know, can humans win, even against the Empire?" He looked up, tired, scarred, but resolute. "We don't just win," he said. "We survive. And when we survive, the galaxy has to learn to respect us. And sometimes the galaxy learns the hard way." Virella smiled, violet eyes glimmering with a fire the Empire had never seen before. For the first time, she understood that humans were not merely soldiers. They were enigmas, untamable and unbreakable. And in Marcus Hale, she had found a teacher, a mentor, and perhaps something far more dangerous, an example of what true strength looked like. The Queen, observing from a palace, could only clutch the throne as fear crawled through her veins. The child she had expected to manipulate, to mold, was learning to think like a human. And humans had no rules. The war was far from over. But the balance had shifted. In ways no one in the Empire could yet understand, the human soldier and the princess were rewriting history. And when humans rewrote history, the galaxy paid attention. The Queen's patience had fractured completely. She had watched Marcus Hale from a distance, witnessed the human precision strikes, their unpredictable movements, and, worst of all, their effect on her daughter. Princess Virella, once obedient and quiet, had become bold, daring, and disturbingly perceptive. The child's fascination with the human soldier had evolved into something the Queen could not control, and that terrified her more than any fleet or weapon ever could. She called a council in the throne hall, summoning the Empire's elite forces, generals with claws sharpened for combat, emissaries armed with ceremonial plasma daggers, and advisors whose eyes could detect the faintest hint of deception. The room vibrated with latent energy and unspoken promise of violence. "Bring him to me," the Queen hissed, her voice slicing through the hole like a whip. "I will break this human's influence over my daughter. I will remind her, and the rest of the Empire, that no human can outmatch the Jylor." The guards obeyed, dragging Marcus Hale forward with precision, though the human remained calm, unflinching, a silent storm of confidence. His armor bore scratches and burns from recent skirmishes, but his posture was immaculate, his eyes steady. Not once did he glance at the weapons surrounding him. He did not bow. He did not plead. He simply walked, and the room seemed to shrink around him. The Queen rose from her throne, her form towering, radiating power in every direction. Her claws glimmered with a venomous sheen, ceremonial daggers at her belt humming with lethal energy. "Human," she said, voice like breaking glass, "you flaunt yourself before my daughter. Do you know what the punishment for such insolence is?" Marcus Hale tilted his head slightly, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Depends on what you mean by punishment," he said. His voice carried the weight of countless battles, not arrogant, not mocking, but calm and deliberate. The Queen's fingers twitched, poised to strike. She gestured, and her elite guard sprang forward in a coordinated surge. Plasma blades ignited, claws extended, the air thick with lethal intent. She had trained her entire life to dominate, to enforce obedience, to crush any opposition. And yet here he stood, unarmed by comparison, outnumbered, and still unshaken. Virella stepped forward. Her small form was dwarfed by the surrounding guards, yet the room seemed to notice her first, as if the air itself bent to her presence. "Mother," she said, her voice clear and unnervingly calm, "let him speak. He's not like the others. He's right." The Queen's eyes narrowed to thin slits. "Right? You would stand here and—" Before she could finish, the room erupted. Marcus moved with a fluidity that seemed almost unnatural. His rifle cracked, precise, deliberate, cutting through the first wave of attackers. Not aimless, not panicked. Every shot neutralized a threat without harming the princess. Jalor soldiers, trained for centuries in the art of combat, fell to tactics they had never imagined. Marcus did not fight to kill indiscriminately. He fought to survive and protect. And when humans fought for something they cared about, they became terrifying in ways no alien culture could fully comprehend. Virella's eyes widened in awe, but she did not hide. Instead, she ran alongside him, darting between pillars, weaving through the chaos with uncanny agility. She mimicked his moves, but in her own way, a child learning from a master. The humans had no fear of protocol, no need to impress, no hesitation. They moved, they acted, and they survived. The Queen's rage turned to disbelief as Marcus disarmed and incapacitated one elite guard after another. Plasma blades were twisted, weapons redirected, and attacks turned against their own wielders. The humans' ingenuity was incomprehensible. While the Empire had relied on hierarchy, protocols, and predictable responses, humans thrived on chaos, adaptability, and daring. When Marcus finally faced the Queen directly, his rifle lowered slightly, his posture relaxed, she saw something she had never expected: calm certainty. No fear, no hesitation. Only the kind of confidence that comes from surviving impossible odds time and time again. "Step aside," he said, voice low and measured. "We're not here to destroy your empire. But if you try to stop us, if you threaten her, I will." The Queen hissed, fury boiling. She lunged forward with a ceremonial blade, but Marcus sidestepped with an almost preternatural awareness. The blade glanced off a pillar, sparks flying, and for the first time, the Queen saw the limitations of her own perfection. Humans did not follow the rules. Humans did not adhere to expectations. Humans survived by breaking the pattern, by thinking one step ahead. Virella watched, heart racing. She realized, in a way that terrified and thrilled her, that humans did not fear the Empire because they refused to. They did not obey the dictates of hierarchy because they refused to. They did not survive by power alone, but by cunning, adaptation, and audacity. Marcus knelt slightly, letting Virella take his hand. "Come on," he whispered. "Let's finish this." And then came the turning point, the moment the Queen would never forget. Marcus and Virella moved as one, weaving through the elite guard with speed and precision that seemed impossible. Marcus used every environmental advantage, every structural flaw, every moment of hesitation in the enemy ranks to their benefit. Entire battalions of the Empire's finest fell before a human and a child, not with reckless brutality, but with surgical efficiency. By the time the dust settled, the Queen stood alone on her throne, trembling. Her guards were down, injured, or retreating. The child she had hoped to mold, to control, to manipulate, had chosen a human over her teachings. And the human soldier, he was still standing, calm, unbroken, untouchable. Virella turned to him, eyes shining. "They were afraid," she said simply. Marcus smiled, blood and soot streaking his armor. "They always are," he said, "because humans, we're unpredictable. And sometimes that's all it takes to survive." The Queen's voice broke, a whisper of disbelief. "How? How could one human?" "They don't just fight like you," Marcus said, calm but firm. "They survive. They adapt. They endure. And when they care about something, they protect it with everything they have. Your empire wasn't ready for that. Neither were you." Virella, standing beside him, nodded. For the first time, she felt true agency. For the first time, she understood the power of choice, of alliance, of trusting instinct over ceremony. The Queen had taught her to obey. Marcus had shown her to think. And in that moment, the young princess knew the future would belong to those who dared, those who survived, and those who refused to be tamed. The room was quiet now, filled with the weight of realization. The Jalor Empire, with all its glory, all its centuries of power, had been outmaneuvered by a human soldier and a small girl who refused to obey. And in that quiet, simmering moment, the first seeds of revolution were sown. Marcus turned to Virella, his expression unreadable but resolute. "This isn't over," he said softly. "But from now on, you'll never underestimate a human again." She smiled, violet eyes gleaming with determination. "Neither will they," she whispered. Outside the palace, the stars seemed to shimmer with a different light that night. Somewhere across the galaxy, human ships moved silently, a whisper of inevitability. Somewhere, Jalor fleets recalculated, struggling to comprehend the audacity of humans. And somewhere, a queen realized that the world she had known, the world she had built, had shifted in ways she could never control. Because when humans fought, they didn't follow the rules. They didn't yield to fear. They didn't surrender to the expectations of others. And when humans fought alongside someone they cared about, the galaxy burned brighter, fiercer, and far more unpredictable than any empire had ever imagined. The dust from the palace hall had barely settled when the consequences rippled outward. Word traveled faster than any messenger, faster than even the Empire's fastest ships. Across the Jalor star systems, whispers of the human soldier and the princess who defied her own empire spread like wildfire. Fleet commanders recalculated their strategies, governors shivered behind screens, the Queen's advisors debated in terrified huddles. Humanity was not supposed to survive such encounters, much less dominate them. Yet they had, and now the galaxy faced the consequences of underestimating humans. Virella stood on the balcony of the palace, overlooking a city that glittered like liquid light. Marcus Hale stood beside her, boots scuffed, armor battered, rifle slung casually, exuding the quiet power of someone who had already faced impossible odds, and survived. Her violet eyes shone, reflecting not only the city below but the fire of determination burning within her. "They think this is chaos," she said softly, almost to herself. "They don't realize this is order." Marcus nodded. "It's human order. We survive, we adapt, and we take what we need when no one else can. The galaxy isn't used to that. It won't forgive it." Virella turned to him, a grin playing on her lips, audacious and dangerous. "Good. Let them try." The Queen, meanwhile, was in her private chambers, the throne hall empty and silent. For the first time in her life, she felt powerless. Her empire had centuries of experience, of authority, of inviolable rules, and all of it had been rendered almost meaningless by one human and a child who refused to obey. Her mind raced through possibilities, contingency plans, military maneuvers, but none of them accounted for humans. Humans were not predictable. Humans were not rational in ways she could anticipate, and humans did not fear her. Marcus had already anticipated this. While the Empire focused on pride, hierarchy, and spectacle, he and his small cadre of human operatives had begun a campaign that would cripple the Empire from within. Sabotage, misinformation, guerrilla strikes, each move surgical, precise, and terrifying in its effectiveness. Entire fleets vanished without a trace. Supply lines evaporated. Communications were corrupted, leaving generals and governors unsure of friend from foe. The humans were everywhere, yet nowhere, a ghost force rewriting the rules of war. Virella had learned quickly. Marcus taught her not only to survive, but to think like a strategist, to see weaknesses in the Empire's machinery, and, above all, to act with audacity. Under her guidance, the humans moved with precision that bordered on prescience, striking targets the Jalor believed untouchable. They used the Empire's arrogance against itself, turning its own infrastructure into traps. One by one, planets fell not because of overwhelming force, but because of human ingenuity. Fleet after fleet was disrupted before it could launch. Political structures crumbled when humans revealed corruption and incompetence in ways the Jalor never anticipated. And all the while, Virella became a symbol of resistance, her alliance with Marcus transforming her from a pawn into a force capable of shaping entire systems. The Queen, desperate, attempted a counterstrike. She gathered her most loyal forces, preparing to strike Marcus and Virella at the heart of their operations. But humans did not fight conventionally. Marcus had already mapped every anticipated move, every patrol, every contingency. The assault was a trap. As the Queen's forces advanced, entire communication networks went dark. Fleets found themselves firing on their own allies, and landing parties were trapped in labyrinthine strikes designed to exploit overconfidence. By the time the Queen realized she had walked into an ambush, her forces were shattered, her generals captured or incapacitated. Virella watched the chaos unfold with grim satisfaction. "They never saw it coming," she said, her voice calm. "Never thought a human and a child could turn their empire upside down." Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder, steadying her. "They still won't. he said, because humans aren't just survivors. We're unpredictable, and we act fast. We see what others overlook. And when we fight for something we care about, we don't stop. The Queen was finally forced to confront the truth. Her daughter had aligned not with protocol or tradition, but with a species that defied expectation. She had been outmaneuvered, humiliated, and outwitted, and the realization burned deeper than any physical wound. The Jylor Empire, powerful, ancient, and feared, had been exposed as vulnerable, and humanity had delivered the lesson. Marcus and Virella moved together through the wreckage of the Empire's command centers, securing prisoners, gathering intelligence, and dismantling threats. But it was not senseless conquest. Humans, Marcus emphasized, fought to survive and protect, not to dominate for glory. Each step, each action, was calculated to minimize unnecessary casualties while ensuring victory. The contrast between human pragmatism and Jylor arrogance was stark, and everywhere it was evident that the galaxy had underestimated them at its peril. As the final fleets were neutralized and the Empire's command fractured, Marcus turned to Virella. "This is what it means to be human," he said. "To adapt, to endure, to protect what matters, and to teach the universe it can't predict us." Virella smiled, her violet eyes glimmering with a mix of triumph and realization. "Then we've done it," she said. "We've shown them." The galaxy would remember, not because humans were the largest, the strongest, or the most numerous, but because they were cunning, audacious, and terrifyingly resilient. Entire star systems would whisper of the human soldier and the princess who defied her own empire, of fleets neutralized without warning, of strategies executed with surgical precision. Humanity had returned fire in ways no alien species had anticipated, and the universe would pay attention. Somewhere, the Queen knelt amid the ruins of her plans, her mind racing with the impossible, how one human and a child had rewritten the rules of power. She realized that humanity was not just a species to be conquered or observed. They were a force of nature, a lesson in unpredictability, endurance, and cunning that the galaxy could not ignore. Marcus watched the stars with Virella beside him, the remnants of the Empire flickering across the skyline below. "They'll rebuild," he said quietly. "Yes," Virella agreed, "but they'll never forget, and neither will the galaxy." He smiled faintly. "Humans don't need to be remembered. We need to survive. And when we do, the universe pays attention." Virella leaned against him. The child who had once been a pawn of the Empire, now a strategist, a partner, and a witness to the uncontainable force that was humanity. "Everyone else was wrong," she said softly. "They always are," Marcus said, steady as ever. "And they'll keep being wrong as long as we're here." Beyond the palace walls, across systems and stars, human fleets moved silently, a quiet reminder of the species no one had truly understood. The galaxy had been warned. The Jylor Empire had been humbled. And one soldier, alongside a girl who had dared to think differently, had ensured that humanity's legacy would not be measured in fear, but in respect, ingenuity, and the relentless drive to survive. Because when humans acted, the galaxy learned a hard truth. They did not fight fair. They did not follow rules. They adapted, endured, and protected what mattered. And when they did, they were unstoppable. The stars themselves seemed to shimmer in acknowledgement, reflecting the light of a species that refused to be predicted, restrained, or tamed. Humanity had not only survived, it had triumphed, leaving the galaxy forever changed, and ensuring that the legend of Marcus Hale and Princess Virella would echo across centuries. And in the quiet moments, when the dust settled and the stars stretched endlessly, Marcus Hale and the princess looked at each other and understood the simple truth of humans. Survival was not optional. Adaptation was inevitable. And sometimes, the universe itself had to bend to the audacity of those who refused to yield.